So this is a CNN clip, all right? So Abby Phillips, I should just know her name. I don't really know anything about her. She's on CNN here. She makes a super hacky point, and Alexandra Rojas, who is the director, I believe, director for Justice Democrats, she actually fires back. It's a pretty dope clip. Let's check this out.
Further is that for a lot of Democrats, what this episode has really shown is that Sanders has some instincts that they're uncomfortable with. This idea of pivoting to blaming the Washington Post has really set some people off, and it's really alarmed some Democrats who, frankly, are already uncomfortable with Bernie Sanders into thinking, yes, he's right about the Russian interference part, but there are other elements of this that they're not comfortable with. Pivoting and saying that the Washington Post is trying to harm them because of who owns the Washington Post, Jeff Bezos, which is literally exactly what Donald Trump says. That's a real problem for him and how he handles it.
Yeah, and I think that I would offer the perspective of this, which is that I'm a relatively new person here at CNN. There are not a ton of people that are my age or that look like me. Most of the people that sit in a lot of the most powerful rooms in the country, pushing forward our news, are are not the same sort of level of class, are a lot less wealthy than the folks that are sitting there. So I think that even though it might not be, literally some person pulling the strings there is a worldview that is vastly different from the everyday voter to who are DC pundits and folks that are in the newsroom. And I think that's where a lot of everyday Americans.
What Bernie's saying.
So basically what she's saying is, TLDR, you guys are in a bubble. That's what she's trying to say. And that's 100% on the money, because people don't give a fuck about, unless you're looking at, the wine moms on Twitter, dude, nobody gives a fuck about the whole Washington Post thing. In fact, they're going to side with him on that. Because it's true. Like, how do you not see the conflict of interest there between the Washington Post being owned by Jeff Bezos, who, do you see what Bernie Sanders did? Bernie Sanders basically forced him to raise his minimum wage to $15. You think that guy's going to like Jeff Bezos? But even that, right? That's like a whole another layer, right? The already layer is that it's a corporate, outlet. All the people there are very wealthy, they're very well known, they're very distinguished, so they're very stuck up and snobby and douchey, and very wealthy. And so they're going to already be anti-Bernie Sanders. And so there's really multiple layers to this game. You know what I mean? There's multiple layers. And so what she's trying to say is, hey, dude, you're in a bubble. That's what you're in. You're in a bubble. And so clearly you are one of those people. You don't see a problem with it because you are part of the problem. People who are part of the problem never know that they're part of the problem. Or at least most of the time they don't. Maybe sometimes they do. But generally speaking, people who are part of the problem, they don't realize they're part of the problem. That's why they are the problem. Otherwise, they most likely, in most scenarios, wouldn't be the problem. And so and her voice is literally a meme, by the way. It's hilarious. It's like, oh, that's what Trump does. Like, all these, like dude, that's not the same thing, dude. Donald Trump screaming fake news at everything because he has a massive ego is not the same thing as Bernie Sanders pointing out clean and cut the bias of corporate-owned media, especially an outlet owned by Jeff Bezos, who he has basically gone to war with and really, kind of kicked him in the ass pretty much. So, and that she's making a good point there, obviously a crucial point, and that's a good point. Why do they never have progressives on there who are like, they'll have progressives on as guests and we're like, oh, thank you for having on a progressive as guest. But think about it. Who's the last real progressive you can think of who was a host on any of these mainstream outlets? Seriously, tell me. Because I can't, dude, you have to go back to, when was Cenk Uygur on MSNBC? What was that, the 2008, 2009, something like that? That's how far back you have to go. They never hire progressive hosts anywhere. Not at MSNBC, not on CNN. I guess the most left-wing you can go is Chris Hayes. And even Chris Hayes is really careful not to toe that line. He only toes that line on Twitter sometimes, but even he will do his kind of bogus, little tip-taps and whatnot. And it's probably not his fault. What can he do? He's probably going to get fired and lose his job. I'm sure he doesn't want that, so you can't really blame the guy. But that's the point she's trying to make. And so she's like, dude, you guys have a culture and you are comprised of people who are out of touch and you are part of the problem. And so that's what Bernie Sanders is talking about. And then, yes, the Bezos thing is a big thing. And the fact that you say, that's just like Donald Trump. When you say that, That's why Trump wins. Because you think that everything is the same with Donald Trump. You think everything that you don't like is the same with Donald Trump, and that's why you lose. So, a really, really interesting clip. I mean, hopefully they have more people like Alexandra Rojas on, because that would be very helpful.